Hi folks, happy Friday to you. I trust you've had an excellent week and spent at least some of it with your head in a book. Talking of which, what have I been reading this week? Actually, before we do that, let me make a request of all you lovely people. In a recent community poll, there seemed to be quite a bit of interest in another video looking at your favourite science fiction cover art. I do already have a few that have been sent in, thank you guys, but I would love to have some more. You can either reply in the comments here letting me know the book /edition/artist, or you can just email me a photo of your favourites. I suppose there is a slight bias to vintage cover art, but only because that tends to be better art. So if you do have a recent book that you think has awesome artwork, then do send that in too. My email address is in the description for this video. Where were we? Yes, my reading this week. I kicked off June's reading with The Tusks of Extinction by Nayler, he of last year's hit The Mountains in the Sea. And this is a novella, it's slim, it's a petite portion of pachyderm, for this is a tale of elephants, or more accurately of mammoths, their ancient woolly cousins. We're introduced to Dr. Demira Kismatalina, a scientist who's studying and trying to protect the last of the elephants in Africa, hunted to near extinction by poachers. To cut to the chase, she's murdered by a poaching gang. And we skip forward then decades to find that mammoths have been reintroduced to the remote Russian taiga, or the steppes. But these mammoths are struggling to survive. They don't really know how to be mammoths. Well, what is one to do? Well, we can download an elephant expert into a mammoth. That'll sort it out. Handily, the technology for this exists. The majority of this short, sharp novella is spent on the taiga with Dalmira, now the matriarch of an increasingly savvy bunch of mammoths. There are still hunters, albeit licensed at great expense, an unusual funding method for a wildlife preserve. The mammoths are not having it, and a certain amount of chaos ensues. This was a quick read, just a couple of hours, and I enjoyed it. Like his first book, it's an ecological warning with some high-tech sci-fi trimmings. Thanks again to Kev for sending this to me in the post. Next, I devoured Mother of Eden by Chris Beckett, which is book 2 of the Eden trilogy. Eden is a dark planet wandering interstellar space with no sun to call home. And as the name suggests, Eden does, however, support life. It is geothermally active, and some lighting is provided by bioluminescence of both flora and fauna. Eden is also now home to a community, actually several communities of humans, all descendants of 2 astronauts stranded 200 or 300 years previously. The first book, Dark Eden, centred around a community of about 500 descendants 150-ish years after the original stranding. Dark Eden is a study of schism and dogma, of male violence and arrogance, and of a perilous existence blighted by inherited genetic deformities and disabilities, the result of a dangerously small gene pool. In Dark Eden, John, Red Lantern and friends, particularly the sensitive Jeff, want change, and led by John, they make it happen, to much reactionary resistance from David and his friends. Dark Eden ends with schism, with John, Jeff and David forming their own communities. Mother of Eden, though, is set some generations later, and humanity is doing a pretty good job of spreading round Eden. As in Dark Eden, there are multiple point of view characters, and you have to be on your toes to clock the change in perspective with each chapter. The John folk, the followers of John, have settled across the sea, the world Pohl. The David folk are on the nearer shore and in the hinterland, and the Jeff folk are a simple community living on an island. Where Dark Eden might have been a study of male power, the women are more at the fore in this book. Starlight Brooking is the main character, living simply on the island with the Jeff folk. She yearns for a bigger life, and on a visit to a David folk port, she meets Greenstone Johnson, the headman's son of the John folk community across the sea. Their eyes meet and they find each other good, and she goes off with him to be his wife, the mother of their community. There ensues a lot of local politics. Starlight gets big ideas about reforming the Eden Heart community that's now her home. Big ideas which the entrenched powers don't appreciate. And all of that happens in the first few chapters. And the rest of the book is a tale of Starlight's rise, her accumulation of power, all with an undercurrent of threat, of punishment, of revenge and double-crossing. I really loved being back in this world. I think Mother of Eden is quite different in character from Dark Eden, but in a good way. We get less close examination of the wildlife and the peril of living on the edge in a dangerous environment that came with Dark Eden. Things are more established here, 150 or 200 years down the line. There are towns, there's some basic technology, and the power structures are very different. Beckett does a great job of painting a picture of life in the different communities, which vary from simple subsistence, communal living, through to fairly ordered municipal life with money, councils, leaders, police or guards, religion, the whole 9 yards. But something is rotten at the heart of both the David folk and the John folk communities, and I really like the Starlight character. She's smart, manipulating with ease her weak new husband, and she has the common touch with the so-called small people in her new home. And although different in character to Dark Eden, I enjoyed the world building in this book too. It's really good stuff, and I'm looking forward to reading the final book, Daughter of Eden. For a total change of scene, next I visited the 1970s in the form of Man Plus by Frederik Pohl, and things are going to hell in a handcart on Earth. There's the ever-present danger of war, of climate disaster, of demagogues. Any of that sound familiar? Salvation comes in the form of a project to upgrade a human so that they can survive in hostile environments such as the surface of Mars. Roger Torroway is a scientist working on the project, but he quickly becomes the subject of the project when the first dies after being overstimulated by all the cyborg inputs into his brain. We follow along as the super invasive modifications are made to Roger's body, his increasing isolation from his friends and loved ones and from humanity in general. And only when Roger finally gets to Mars does his new body make sense, and he revels in the freedom and the ability it gives him there. At 220 pages, there's really quite a lot packed into Man Plus. There's some love interest, there's deception and betrayal, misadventures and setbacks, and there is a ghost in the machine, a mysterious third party that is observing progress and subtly trying to influence it. Who are they and what are their motivations? Are they friend or foe? I enjoyed Man Plus much better than I enjoyed Gateway, the other Frederik Pohl book that I read earlier in the year. The protagonist is more likeable for a start, and there was much less hanging around doing nothing, the thing that mainly put me off with Gateway. Next, I read Land of the Headless by Adam Roberts, a short book by recent standards. It's under 300 pages, but like Man Plus, there's an awful lot going on. The tale is told by the protagonist, John Kavala, a poet and musician, and it's set in the distant future where humanity has colonised a number of worlds. John lives in a world run on fundamentalist religious lines, a strange mashup of Islam and Christianity. The punishment for adultery, for rape, for murder, and for blasphemy is beheading. In these enlightened times, the consciousness of the condemned is downloaded into a wearable computer, an ordinator. Duly punished, the headless are then sent back into society to a life of prejudice, fear, and menial labour without their heads. Meeting with a small group of other recently decapitated headless, and joined by one charity worker, Susan, a nun of sorts, John and his companions resolve to walk for a few days to the next town to better themselves there. They reach the town after some privations, and while the nun is in a shop, the three headless are arrested and detained in the local police station. And what follows seems borrowed from Kafka's The Trial. The men are bewildered to be accused of the crime of rape of their charity worker companion, and each denies it, and each accuses one of the others. Their situation is perilous. The punishment for a headless for such a crime is final. It's death. John is offered an out. He can join the army and go and fight in the Sugar War. Out of alternative, John heads off, no pun intended, to basic training. The headless are trained separately from the headed. The normal privations of military training are made all the more difficult by a cattle prod device deployed at the slightest provocation by the trainers, which inflicts agonising pain via the ordinators each of the headless has attached to their spines. This is a really great book. There's so much packed into it. I found the visual image of headless people to be jarring, the more so as the story is narrated by a headless individual who seems perfectly normal in his internal self. I caught a whiff of Catch-22 in this book too. There's some of the military scenes are absurd and contradictory. And there are 2 or 3 really good twists, some short-term and some longer-range, slow-burning, that resolve very satisfactorily at the end of the book for me. I enjoyed it, and I think it might be my favourite Adam Roberts so far. I also got about halfway through Demon in White, the 3rd book in the Sun Eater series, and as predicted, I ran out of free audio hours on my Spotify account. So instead of Jack Vance's Star King, I picked up the physical book when I finished Land of the Headless. And I'm enjoying being back in this world. More on that next week, by which time I will have finished it, I hope. As a bonus extra, not on my TBR pile this month, I'm listening to The Demolished Man by Alfred, and I picked that because it was free and I didn't need to spend one of my Audible monthly credits on it. I read this book when I was about 12, and the only thing I remember about it are that there was ESP, or extrasensory perception, and that there was a game of naked hide and seek, which was quite a titillating prospect for a 12-year-old. I'm about a quarter in. It's a short book, less than 200 pages, and I will finish it, I think, whilst I'm out on my run tomorrow. I reckon that is a pretty good week's reading. What have you been reading this week? Anything you'd particularly recommend? Do let us know in the comments down below. Channel stuff then, subscribers are at 2,846, which is up 20 on last week. And if you are one of those 20, or if you've just arrived for the first time now, welcome to you all. I'm John, and I focus on reading, collecting, and chatting about science fiction books, old and new. Comment of the week this week was from Soul's Journey, who, in a reply to the Look Back at May's reading, which was on Sunday, who said that they appreciated the nice mix of authors and titles, and that they get tired of seeing the same ones talked about on various other channels, and a very refreshing choice of books, they said, which is lovely to hear. Thank you. It's not a particularly deliberate policy. I just have a large range of books on my shelves, and in a suitably random selection, I get a good mix usually. Thank you to Soul's Journey for taking the time to comment, and to anyone that's taken the time to comment in a video this week. As always, I really appreciate it and try to respond to every single one. What was on the channel this week? Well, not a whole lot. I confess to you that I'm going through a bit of a video slump at the moment, preferring very much to have my head in a book rather than making videos about them. I am noodling around with a couple of video ideas, but they're firmly in pre-production at the moment. Despite those procrastinations and caveats, there were a couple of videos. On Sunday, there was a look back at May's reading, a merciless tier ranking of the books that I read, a retrospective, if you will, ending in a declaration of my book, or in this case, books of the month. May was a cracking month of reading, and I really enjoyed making that video. On Wednesday, there was a bookshelf audit, the final episode of such, for now at least, in which I tried to make room on my shelves for more deserving books. Duplicates, books that I read but weren't that great, or that I don't think I'll ever read. I'm sure that I wasn't as ruthless as I could have been, but I did cull a pretty good pile that I'm now busy selling. In fact, if you're in the UK, there's still plenty left in that eBay listing, and I'll put the link in the comments. And that was it on the channel this week. Slim pickings. Bear with, normal service to be resumed this coming week. Probably. What did I watch this week? Again, not a lot. I was too busy reading. I did watch another episode or two of Three Body Problem, and was suitably grossed out by the nanowire trap in the Panama Canal. If you've watched it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I also watched a video that appeared on my YouTube feed, a Michael Moorcock interview from 1988. He remains unread on my list of shame, but it was interesting to hear him speak, and I was also interested by the interviewer, one Colin Greenland. He's another author that you'll be hearing a bit more about in the coming months. I've been busy acquiring his science fiction output, which is small, but well lauded. I'll put the link to that video in the description. In the book buying arena, the first week of June has been relatively quiet, with a handful of books ordered and a few arriving that were ordered towards the end of May. I was also pleasantly surprised by an arrival from the US, a book that I'd forgotten I ordered. It's taken several weeks to get across the Atlantic. The pile for the next haul video stands at 38, with another arriving tomorrow. That haul video is going to be a good one. Looking ahead to the coming week on the channel, there will probably be that video on the second golden age that I've been noodling about for the last couple of weeks, but I might get distracted by something else, another video that I've also been thinking about. And if I get enough inputs from you all, there might also be that look at some cool cover art. And I think that that's all I can sensibly commit to at this point. Reading wise, I'll be finishing Demon in White, and I'll be finishing The Demolished Man. And then I think I'll tackle Alien Clay in actual book form. And then once I finish Demolished Man, I'll see what takes my fancy on audiobook. I might even cough up an Audible credit and pick up something off my official TBR for June. Or I might choose a free book that takes my fancy, who can tell. As always, thank you for watching. Have a fabulous weekend. And until next time, goodbye for now.